On this episode, we talked with artist Stacia Goodman. We talked about large-scale mosaics, her approach to public art, and on being selected by the La Crosse Arts Board to create a work for the newly renovated La Crosse Center. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is La Crosse Local.
So I'm Stacia Goodman of Stacia Goodman Mosaics, and I was born in southern Minnesota in Northfield. That's where my parents were from. But when I was about 3, my parents split up and I moved with my mom and the guy who would become my stepdad. We moved to rural northern Minnesota to a tiny town called Kettle River that had about 150 people in one of the poorest counties in the state. So that was my upbringing in a trailer house in northern Minnesota in the woods.
What turned you on to art? Like, what was the process? Was that an early thing, or did you kind of jump into it later in life?
You know, I think for a lot of artists, I still struggle with that word artist a little bit because I have no formal arts training. I think of myself as being creative and having a wonderful imagination, I think, more than calling myself an artist. And I think that my art that I make today grew out of just being from the womb, really curious and being a creative, imaginative maker sort of kid who didn't even know that the word artist or art existed. I had no access to the arts. I didn't go to a museum until I was into my 20s, for sure. But I was always gathering stuff, making stuff. Just a quick story. I remember as a young kid, my mom worked as a secretary at a lumber yard. And all I wanted for my birthday that year was this little saw that had a blue handle. And I just wanted this saw. And when I got the saw, I was so excited. And I went into the woods in the back of our house and started cutting down all these little birch tree saplings and made myself a tree house, with just nails and that little. So it was just there, really, really young, just wanting to make stuff with my hands, very tactile.
So working in the field of mosaics, who are some of your influences? I mean, they could be other artists, or it could be music for all we're interested in. What are some of your influences when creating these?
Well, I could throw out a bunch of names of mosaic artists, but I don't think it would necessarily resonate with people. And actually, I don't like to study other mosaic art because I don't want it to influence necessarily what I'm doing. So my biggest influences are, first and foremost, always has been nature because of growing up, I say, in the woods and the water of northern Minnesota. And to this day, too, I am always outside. I'm in my kayak, I'm skiing, I'm running, I'm biking, I'm doing open water swims. I am just of that ilk. And then architecture and textile patterns. I'm really a pattern artist is how I think of myself. So any kinds of patterns in nature, in architecture. On my Instagram account, half of my Instagram account is my mosaic art, and the other half is just these patterns that I create because I love patternry. And then music, for sure. I mean, I don't know where I would be without Spotify. I love, love, love music. I love NPR's Tiny Desk concerts to find new music. I love live music and of all genres. I'm actually a big fan of rap and hip hop. Today, as I was running, I was listening to old Ray Charles. I was listening to Cardi B. It just is this huge range of music that I'm really influenced by. And I think of all of it as kind of spoken word and then with really great beats in there. And it's like, love it. So those are my biggest influences. And then my just crazy noodle brain that's always seeing things,
How do you approach a public art piece, when you come into a community? How does it all start?
I like to tell people that being a public artist comes with a very great responsibility. I see it that way. And there are a lot of best practices in public art. It's not about just, I want to create this thing for my portfolio that I want to put up on this wall or in this space. Every public art project that I go toward always begins with really deep research about place, about culture, history, community. And when I say history, it's really going far back. I'm going back to who are these lands initially, the people who, this is the ancestral land of these people. And it's not white people. That's from colonialism and all sorts of things. And so it's really going very, very far back and looking at history, and not just like the good fluffy stuff. It's looking at the difficult stuff and the painful things that have happened, the people who have been marginalized and wounded and carry those wounds to this day. And I approach that public art, the design process, with all of that knowledge, as well as how can we engage community in this process? Because the tagline I have for Stacia Goodman Mosaics is capture the story of your space. So I think of myself as really just the conduit of the story that we want to shine a spotlight on and tell through the artwork. So it is not just about making a mosaic in the space and plopping it down and then being done with it. It's very much of a relationship with the commissioning body, the community, and oftentimes that relationship can continue after I'm done making the art as well. I may go back to the community and talk to them. People will start following my art, and then I may end up mentoring younger artists that I meet. So it's a very full, rich process that for me is an enormous, enormous privilege to be part of.
Congrats, by the way. You were selected by the City of La Crosse Arts Commission to create a work for the newly renovated, well, brand new build, actually, at the Crosse Center. Can you tell us about that project?
Yes, I would love to. So just quickly about the process, in case people don't know, it's a very, very competitive process to get selected for a piece of public art. Usually the commissioning body puts out what's called an RFQ, a request for qualifications. It was a national art call, so all of the public artists like me are hooked into all of these databases and networks, and we see these opportunities come up, and you try to see if something might be a good fit. And most of the time it's not. You know, they're looking for people who are painting murals or making large outdoor sculptural works, or they're doing modern digital art. And so really has to be a good fit with my skill set and what they're asking for. And so after they send out that call, you go through a process of submitting, you know, a letter of interest, your resume, images, all sorts of background information to basically say, you know, this is who I am. This is the kind of work that I do. And from there, they select finalists. And usually it can be anywhere from 2 to 6 or 7 finalists. And at that point, you're asked to put together a design proposal and full color renderings. And because I have a lot of ideas, I usually submit 3 or 4 different designs after I've done all that research. And then at that point, you know, you present to the commissioning body. There's probably a lot of discussion that goes on, a voting process, and then the finalist is selected from there. So I tell people that 99.99% of what I deal with is actually rejection, because I apply to a lot of projects and I don't get nearly all of them. And I don't even get selected as a finalist. So I tell people winning a public art project is very much of a numbers game. I mean, sometimes hundreds and hundreds of artists will apply, but I tell people it's like finding a needle that's hidden in a haystack, in a secret box, under a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, it is a very difficult process, and it does not come without a ton of rejection. In my case, a lot of tears, because I wear my heart on my shoulder. And there are times where I truly believe that it would just be a fabulous match for me to work with a community, but the feelings aren't mutual. And so you just pick yourself up and you keep going. But, you know, for anybody who follows me on Instagram or subscribes to my newsletter, they just see the pretty shiny stuff that I win. They don't hear all of the things that I don't get. So I've actually changed that up now, and I'm being really honest with people when I don't win projects. I show them designs I've come up with that will never go anywhere. But I'm trying to really be honest with them about what the life of an artist is like, and it's not all unicorns and rainbows.
So can you share actually what the piece is going to be at La Crosse Center? Are you allowed to do that right now, or?
Yeah, and I always follow the lead of the commissioning board. In this case, it's the Lacrosse Arts Board, I believe is the official name. And they have already shared it in a news release and with media. So some people may have already seen it, but it's quite a large wall. And it is going to be this flowing river that goes sort of diagonally up the wall. And the artwork has to be situated about 8 feet high off the ground because it's a pass-through traffic area with people, there are exhibitors in that certain spot within the center. So there are practical considerations. So it's this flowing waterway that will have glass, tile, I'll have wood in there because I do a lot of mixed media stuff. But the focal point is really this huge wingspan of a heron that is flying over the river. You can see its shadow down below. But the part, and it's really interesting and important, this next thing I'm going to tell you, because it's where the connection to the research that I talk about comes in. I could have left it just as a heron, and that's very placemaking, so to speak, for the La Crosse area. But I really went back and learned a lot about the Ho-Chunk Nation and their presence in the La Crosse area. And they used to have a very strong presence downtown. They would come and sell their beautiful baskets that they would make. And so then I researched that and I realized the woven nature of these baskets is just beautiful. And that just history needs to come forward. And so the design on the heron's wings will be some sort of a woven basket type design. And I'm hoping to work with a native student, maybe from one of the local universities, who will actually do that design. And I will work with that student. I will pay them a stipend. So I will help to do some mentoring and lifting up at the same time and having really that authentic imagery in there from that community that, frankly, lacrosse is named after a native game, lacrosse. So, and then in the didactic next to the art, which I will write, will tell of that history. So it's a way to bridge the past, present, and future together.
So I'm sure, things have changed for you over, this last year with the pandemic, just with, 99.9% of the population. Forgetting that, what are you excited about 2021? Is there something that you're kind of freshly coming out of that sort of experience of the pandemic? Is there anything coming down the line that you think you're excited for? Was it a creative time for you, or?
Boy, I could talk personally or professionally, I guess. Being able to hug my kids vaccinated was just, like for so many of us, that was, there's nothing better than that. So I'm excited for more of that. It was a very creative time for me. I was really fortunate to have projects lined up, public art projects lined up, and I had some really tight deadlines. So for me, I hunkered down in my studio and I made a lot of art, not only public art, but I've developed a studio practice for gallery art, and I make landscapes from reclaimed wood. And I made a lot of those during the pandemic. I got a new saw, and I now sell them at a gallery in Minneapolis, and they've been selling. And I'm really excited about that because that's a very different process than the public art process. It's very personal for me, and have a big sustainability component within my artwork and try to recycle, upcycle as much as I can. So it was a good time. It was a good time, and I became a really good cross-country skier. I spent a lot of time outside on the trails doing cross-country skiing and skate skiing, and I took care of myself, and we survived. What more can I say? I'm happy about that.
So if people want to find out more, what's the best avenue to send them to?
So there are 4 ways that people can learn more about my art, and they can follow my work in progress, and that will include the lacrosse piece. So I post status. Once I start a process, I post a lot of status photos. I'll make some status videos. I love to educate people about mosaic art and just sort of my process. I think that's a lot of fun, and I like watching other artists do that as well. And it's a great way to engage the community. And I'm hoping to work with the city of La Crosse to build excitement for the artwork's eventual unveiling by people following the process. So people can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's Stacia, Stacia, Goodman, spelled Goodman, Mosaics, Mosaics. So Stacia Goodman Mosaics on Instagram and Facebook. You can also go to my website, Stacia Goodman Mosaics, and on there is a sign-up form for my quarterly newsletter. And so you can sign up to get that. It's just a sweet deal. It's not a lot of copy. It's not going to take a lot of your time, but I post a lot of photos, not only for my public art projects, but my gallery work that I'm doing. And then this really fun pop-up pattern work that I do with materials that I find in nature. And it's just a quick temporary sort of ephemeral piece of art that I do. The wind blows it away, but a lot of people really enjoy seeing that as well. Yeah, so lots of avenues. And if anybody ever has questions too, they can I'm always open to emails from people and to answer questions and be very interactive with people. I mean, that's my favorite part of what I do is the people part of it.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.